In 1914, Srinivasa Ramanujan, a self-taught math prodigy from India, finally steps through the gates of Trinity College in England. He has crossed the world for one reason: to get his independent research published. John Littlewood, a fellow mathematician, greets him warmly at the door and leads him inside. But behind the walls of the college, the Trinity Fellowship is already turning against him. To them, Ramanujan is an uneducated outsider from a third world background. A man with no formal proof behind the bold claims he sent in his letter. That same letter is the reason Professor Godfrey Harold Hardy brought him here in the first place. And Hardy is now forced to defend Ramanujan's credibility while the old foxes whisper doubts from every corner. The room falls quiet the moment Littlewood walks in with Ramanujan. But the silence says everything. Nobody accepts him yet. They are only waiting to see whether this stranger is a genius or a fraud. Hardy, however, is not exactly the warm welcome Ramanujan expected. He does not even shake his hand. He simply tells him work begins at 10 the next morning, then walks off, like the conversation is already finished. Did I say something wrong? Don't worry. Littlewood, already used to Hardy's stone-faced attitude, promises the confused Ramanujan that he will help him whenever he can. Bertrand Russell, the later world-famous philosopher, also stops by for a quick greeting before Ramanujan settles into his new dorm room, where fresh stacks of high-quality paper are waiting on his desk, like a silent invitation to begin. The next morning, Ramanujan is praying to his goddess Namagiri when the 10 o'clock bell rings. He jumps up and rushes toward Hardy's office, only for an elderly professor to stop him halfway and harshly order him off the grass. Because only elected fellows of Trinity College are allowed to walk there. By the time Ramanujan reaches Hardy's office, his excitement drops fast. Hardy and Littlewood explain that before anything gets published, he must attend lectures and learn the formal methods of mathematical study. Worse, every theorem he has written, old or new, now needs proper proofs to show that it is actually correct. For Ramanujan, this is the worst possible news. He did not come all the way to England to sit through boring lectures and prove ideas he already knows are true. Besides, he has already filled more than 2 notebooks with independent research. When Hardy and Littlewood realize how much work he has brought with him, even they are left staring in disbelief. Later, in the college mess hall, Russell points out that it could take Hardy a lifetime to prove every groundbreaking formula in Ramanujan's notebooks. Hardy does not seem scared by that. If anything, he sees the potential. Ramanujan arrives and is greeted by Chandra Mahalanobis, one of the few Indian students on campus, along with Chandra's friend Andrew Hartley. Both have already heard the rumors. The uneducated newcomer from India, his impossible notebooks, and his recent work on the prime number theorem. Andrew also reveals that Hardy himself came from a modest background, which may be why he judges Ramanujan by merit instead of pedigree. Then a waiter drops meat onto Ramanujan's plate, and Chandra immediately returns it. Knowing Ramanujan is a strict vegetarian because of his Brahmin upbringing, Ramanujan settles for potatoes instead, until Andrew casually mentions they were cooked in pig fat. That one detail kills his appetite completely. Ramanujan politely excuses himself and leaves, but Hardy catches up and asks if he enjoyed the mutton. Ramanujan looks him dead in the face and lies that it was delicious. A mighty fine mutton. Yes, sir. Delicious. And your rooms satisfactory? I want everything to be to your advantage so that we can be as productive as possible. Thank you, sir. Very nice paper. Use it wisely. I let us say good night then. The next day, Professor Howard notices Ramanujan is not taking notes during his lecture and immediately decides to make an example out of him. He calls Ramanujan to the front and asks him to contribute to the equation on the board, clearly hoping to embarrass the so-called genius transfer student. Instead, Ramanujan finishes the proof in one go, even though he has never heard of the theorem before. The class is stunned, but nobody claps. Howard dismisses everyone except Ramanujan, then turns on him in private, throws racial insults at him, and warns him never to steal his thunder in his own classroom again. Ramanujan leaves shaken and confused, eventually wandering into the antechapel, where the memorial statues of Sir Isaac Newton and other great minds stand in silence. For a moment, their glow gives him something he badly needs in this cold foreign world: hope. But hope does not make Hardy any less demanding. Ramanujan still hates being forced to write proofs over and over because he has absolute faith in the intuition behind his formulas. Hardy argues that faith is not enough. Every claim must be tested, especially with so many people at Trinity waiting for Ramanujan to make one mistake. In this hostile atmosphere, a single false theorem could ruin him before he ever gets started. Why do you think they want us to fail? Because I'm Indian. Because of what we represent. Now, Euler and Jacobi, who were they? Mathematicians, just names to you. Euler was the most productive mathematician of the 18th century. Most of his work done after he was blind. Jacobi, like you, was snatched from obscurity and was almost as impressive as Euler. Now I think you are in their class. What they had in common, what I see in you, is a love of form. It's all through your notebooks. Let me ask you some. Why do you do it? Any of this? Because I have to. I see it, like Euler. Form for its own sake, an art unto itself. And like all art, it reflects truth. And you dance with numbers to infinity. Hardy tells him that patience is the only way forward. If Ramanujan does the work properly, his notebooks may one day belong in the Wren Library beside Newton's Principia Mathematica and the works of the great geniuses who came before him. That finally reaches Ramanujan, and he nods in understanding. A few days later, a letter arrives from his wife Janaki in India. She misses him terribly, but she also tells him everyone back home is proud of his journey and his achievements. Her words lift his spirit, and soon another mathematical revelation comes to him in the middle of prayer. Excited, Ramanujan rushes straight to Hardy's office to share the discovery, only for Hardy to shut him down immediately. They just agreed, proofs first, no more new research. Ramanujan, frustrated by the endless delay, complains that he still has not published anything and leaves with a sour look on his face. But once he is gone, Hardy studies the new work anyway, and despite himself, he is impressed. The discovery deals with partitions, which means the number of ways a number can be split into smaller numbers that add up to it. The number 4, for example, can be arranged in only 5 different ways. But the larger the number gets, the faster those combinations explode. By the time you reach 100, there are over 204,000 ways to add up to it. Major McMahon, Trinity's leading expert in combinatorics, reached that conclusion through painful hand calculations. Ramanujan, however, is now claiming he has found a formula that can calculate partitions for numbers in the millions or even billions in less than a minute, instead of forcing someone to spend weeks or months doing it by hand. Logging in the number, any number, and on comes the number of partitions like magic. I take it, you have tried to crack this one before. That's considered impossible, unsolvable. Not a rabbit hole mystery of the universe. Until now? Ding, ding, ding. Meanwhile, Ramanujan keeps his head down in Howard's next lecture, staying as quiet as a mouse, so Professor Jealous has no fresh excuse to come after him. But in Hardy's office, his frustration boils over again when he sees the proofs he submitted covered in highlighted mistakes. He storms after Hardy, carefully circling around the stupid grass, and complains about the endless proofwriting. Hardy easily brushes off Ramanujan's beta whining, but he also gives him a reason to keep going. He has handled some of the proofs himself, and Ramanujan's first paper on highly composite numbers is being published in the London Mathematical Society. Just like that, Ramanujan's anger vanishes. He is over the moon. Back in India, Ramanujan's mother is just as proud and makes sure the whole neighborhood hears about her son's achievements. Janaki, however, cannot fully share the celebration. Her husband has been published, praised, and spoken about by everyone, but he still has not written a letter meant only for her. Don't pay attention to her. She's not proud enough of his achievements. Back in London, Chandra and Andrew burst into Ramanujan's room and wake him in a panic. America has officially joined the war, and the news hits Ramanujan hard because every new turn in the conflict makes it even less likely that Janaki can come to England. The war is already swallowing everyone around him. Even Littlewood has been summoned by the War Office to use his mathematical skills for ballistics. Before leaving, he speaks privately with Hardy and suggests that Ramanujan's hatred of proofs may not be simple impatience. Maybe he avoids them because deep down, he fears they might expose his formulas as wrong. Ramanujan may be a mathematical genius, but he is still not a god. In India, Janaki refuses to let the war decide everything. She dictates a letter promising Ramanujan she is still willing to sail to England and reunite with him, war or no war. While writing for her, the scribe reveals that he used to know Ramanujan in his own way. Ramanujan rarely spent time with people because he was usually too busy filling the abandoned corridor of a nearby temple with equations. That detail pulls Janaki straight to the temple, where she finds the stone slabs covered in the chalk marks of her husband's mind. For a moment it feels like she has found him again, not in person, but in spirit. Later she gives the letter to her mother-in-law for postage, but the old woman receives it coldly and still refuses to let Janaki help with the housework. The moment Janaki leaves, Ramanujan's mother hides the letter in a secret box beneath her closet instead of mailing it. Meanwhile, the war starts crushing Ramanujan from every side. Rationing makes it almost impossible for him to find fresh vegetables, leaving a strict vegetarian diet in ruins. Worse, no letters are arriving from home, so the silence from India begins to feel like abandonment. But the real blow comes after he leaves the post office and gets cornered by 3 bitter soldiers. They resent being dragged out of university and forced into war while this foreign genius gets to stay at Trinity without facing the battlefield. Their jealousy turns violent. The Ramanujan does not escape that evening without bruises and kicks.
This is our home.
Don't you forget it. Hours later, he sits in front of vegetables too rotten to cook and too rotten to eat. Hungry, beaten, and lonely, Ramanujan climbs into bed on an empty stomach, drifting into a daze as he thinks of Janaki. The next morning, Hardy publicly declares his pacifist stance as a member of the UDC, the anti-war organization founded by Bertram Russell and others. But the war has no patience for men who speak against it. Littlewood leaves for military duty, and Hardy soon finds a college council notice banning all future UDC meetings on Trinity grounds. His protest about free speech goes nowhere. Howard, Major McMahon, and another professor only sneer at him, warning that Russell may lose his lectureship for his pacifism. And with the college already hostile toward outsiders and dissenters, even Ramanujan could be deported back to his little hometown. That evening, word arrives from Littlewood with worse news. He has tested Ramanujan's work on the prime number theorem and discovered that Ramanujan's assumptions were wrong. Even so, Littlewood insists Ramanujan has the sharpest mind he has ever seen, maybe even straight-up Newton caliber. He warns Hardy not to let Howard and the other jealous idiots win, but also not to suffocate Ramanujan's gift with his own control-freak obsession with procedure. The failure hits Ramanujan hard because the proof is undeniable. His earlier claim about prime numbers is wrong. Hardy's solution is the same as always. No more publishing until more proofs are done. But this time, Ramanujan snaps. He accuses Hardy of being a faithless man with no God, no family, and no belief in Ramanujan or his intuition. You've never even seen me, let alone know me. You are a man of no faith. I don't see pictures of anyone here, not even family. Who are you, Mr. Hardy? How dare you? How dare you judge me? But it is you who does of me, don't you see? No, quite frankly, I don't. Don't you know what I've given up to be here? Then he asks if Hardy can even see the bruises on his face and reminds him that he has a wife waiting for him back home. After that, he storms out. Yet later that night, instead of giving up, Ramanujan leaves a set of beautiful new proofs on Hardy's table and slips away without saying a word. The next morning, Hardy runs into him at the medical camp just as Ramanujan is leaving a tent. Ramanujan brushes off Hardy's concern and says it is only a mild fever. But that evening, while attending a funeral with Russell, Hardy cannot stop thinking about him. First, Ramanujan exploded over proofs. Then, that same night, he quietly delivered flawless ones. Russell cuts straight through the contradiction with sarcasm, suggesting Hardy has finally broken Ramanujan's originality with his hellish obsession with method. Hardy says little, but the comment clearly stays with him. Back in Hardy's office, Ramanujan keeps grinding through proofs as usual. This time, Hardy changes his approach. Instead of holding him back, he decides to gamble on him. He goes straight to Major McMahon, the combinatorics expert who once failed to solve partitions and has become one of Ramanujan's loudest opponents. Hardy tells him Ramanujan may be able to solve partitions once and for all. McMahon scoffs at 242 what? Point 1549090. Yes, Charles play. Try me. Go on. Same number square. 3,438,532,321. Combinatorics, that's what I do. Glorified dice throwing. Bloody nerve of you both. You fail on primes and you think you could just turn around and crack partitions. Can't be done, I'm telling you, and I will. No, I will, by slow and painful addition, and then you can be absolutely certain that whatever formula you two can dream up will be quite wrong. Now, how high do I have to go? BF 200 to do. I really can do it. Weeks later, McMahon returns with his result. There are almost 4 trillion ways to add up to 200, and he reached the answer by hand. One brutal calculation at a time. But Ramanujan's formula predicts the same result almost instantly, missing by only 2%. The result completely blows McMahon's socks off, and Hardy could not be prouder. Later that night, Ramanujan suddenly breaks into a violent coughing fit and collapses onto the floor. Chandra rushes him to the medical camp, where the truth finally surfaces. Ramanujan has tuberculosis, most likely worsened by his poor diet and the brutal wartime conditions around him. But instead of worrying about himself, Ramanujan makes Chandra promise not to tell Hardy, because if Hardy finds out how sick he really is, their work might fall apart. Before Chandra can even process that, an enemy aircraft wars overhead and bombs the streets of London, leaving bodies scattered through the chaos. As they rush to safety, Ramanujan cannot shake the thought that he is being punished for leaving India as a Brahmin. Far away in India, Janaki is breaking too. She has waited ages for a letter that never comes, and the silence finally convinces her that her husband has abandoned her. Heartbroken, she runs to the temple and collapses there in tears, sobbing alone in the same place where Ramanujan once left pieces of himself behind. But in London, the work continues. Hardy suggests that Ramanujan integrate Cauchy's theorem into his partitions formula, and after some fine-tuning, Ramanujan brings the error margin down to 1%. The breakthrough gives Hardy enough confidence to reveal that he has already applied for Ramanujan to be approved as a fellow by the college council. For Ramanujan, this is more than a title. It is proof that the world may finally recognize him. As their partnership deepens, Hardy asks where all these impossible intuitions come from. Ramanujan simply says, "I don't know." On the day of the council meeting, Russell already knows how this will end. As he walks with Hardy, he quietly admits that Ramanujan will not be accepted yet. The vote goes badly, exactly as expected. And that evening, Hardy stands at Ramanujan's door, embarrassed by the failure. Ramanujan forgives him, knowing Hardy fought for him as much as he could, but the rejection lands on top of everything else. The illness, the loneliness, the silence from home, and his body starts giving out. First, he coughs blood. Then he wakes late at night drenched in sweat, terrified by hallucinations, and stumbles back to the medical camp. Surrounded by the smell of blood, medicine, and misery, he collapses again. Hardy finally tracks him there the next evening, but Ramanujan has already disappeared on his own. By now, Ramanujan believes there is no surviving the disease. There has still been no word from Janaki. His fellowship has just been rejected, and the life he crossed the world to build feels like it is closing in on him from every direction. At his lowest point, he quietly walks to the Metropolitan Railway Station, where he tries to borrow Brother Train's might to help him reincarnate as a rainbow into a better world. Hardy rushes to the medical camp as soon as he hears what happened. Luckily, a nearby conductor pulled Ramanujan back in time, or he really would have become a seven-colored rainbow by now. Hardy also learns the truth at last. This was never just a strange cough. Ramanujan has advanced tuberculosis. When Ramanujan wakes, he apologizes for all the trouble he has caused Hardy over the years, but Hardy does not see it that way. His only regret is that he failed to notice Ramanujan's suffering sooner, when he still might have been able to help. Soon after, Bertrand Russell is finally expelled because nobody wants to hear from a pacifist in wartime. Howard watches from a distance, gloating. His only regret is that Hardy and his pet Ramanujan were not thrown out with him. But another senior professor warns him not to underestimate Ramanujan anymore. According to Major McMahon, the same Indian they all look down on may be on the edge of a major breakthrough in partitions. Howard cannot comprehend it, and his ego refuses to accept it. At Ramanujan's bedside, Hardy apologizes for not being a better friend when Ramanujan needed one most. He admits that for him, life has always been mathematics, nothing else. Emotions are basically an unknown flying object to him. That honesty pushes Ramanujan to finally answer the question Hardy asked before, where his inspiration comes from. It comes from his goddess Namagiri, who whispers secrets of the universe to him between prayers. That is why he hates writing soulless proofs. To him, they are equations without breath, without divinity. Do you believe me? Because if you are my friend, then you will know that I'm telling you the truth, that you are truly my son. But since Hardy is a hardcore atheist, Ramanujan believes they may never truly understand each other or be friends. Hardy disagrees. Not believing in divine creation is not the same as not believing in Ramanujan. At this time, Ramanujan hears the sincerity in his voice. His spirit lifts even more when Hardy tells him a letter has finally arrived from home. But the letter is not the reunion he hoped for. Janaki writes that she has spent years confused and miserable, believing her husband abandoned her without warning or response. Now, she is left to live with her brother, sending this final letter as goodbye. Ramanujan breaks down and immediately writes back through tears. The anxiety sends him back into the hospital, but even there, the work does not stop. When Hardy visits, he is shocked to learn Ramanujan has refined the partitions formula to less than a 0.04% error margin, and this time, he has already done all the stupid proofs to prove it correct. Even Major McMahon is stunned. Since Trinity College refused Ramanujan when it had the chance, Hardy now aims higher and applies directly for a fellowship at the Royal Society of London. McMahon, fully won over by Ramanujan's brilliance, agrees to help. Littlewood is brought back for support as well. On the day of the Royal Society meeting, Hardy gives a heartfelt speech about Ramanujan's merit, originality, and breakthrough in partitions. Mr. Littlewood once told me, every positive integer is one of Ramanujan's personal friends. I believe this to be true. He told me that an equation for him had no meaning unless it expressed the thought of God. Well, despite everything in my being said to the contrary, perhaps he is right. We are merely explorers of infinity. We do not invent these formulae, they already exist, and lie in wait for only the very brightest of minds like Firmanator ever to divine and prove. In the end, who are we to question Ramanujan, let alone God? Howard is still there, bitching to anyone who will listen about having his time wasted by the Indian fraudster twice. But McMahon takes the floor and shuts that nonsense down, firmly declaring Ramanujan the brightest mind he has ever seen. For once, Howard has nothing left to say. Soon after, the doctor hands Ramanujan the letter confirming his election as a Fellow of the Royal Society of London. Around the same time, Janaki finally receives a reply from her husband and rushes back to their shared home. A frantic search through her mother-in-law's bedroom reveals the truth. Dozens of unread letters from Ramanujan have been hidden away for years. His mother enters and admits, with guilt, that she could not let Janaki be invited to London, because her son might have stayed there forever. Far away, Ramanujan is finally looking healthier. The war is over. He is preparing to return home. And despite everything, he has achieved more than most men could dream of. He and Hardy walk together with a quiet gratitude for what their partnership has given them. When Ramanujan tries to circle around the grass because he is still not technically a Trinity Fellow, Hardy pulls him across anyway, because Ramanujan is a Royal Fellow now, which is a step above, so who cares? Inside, the entire college council is waiting to nominate him as a Fellow of Trinity College as well. Hi, Srinivas Ramanujan, elected Fellow of Trinity College. At last, the day of departure arrives. Hardy is late to the meeting spot because of a lousy cab driver with the boring plate number 1729. Without missing a beat, Ramanujan says it is actually a very interesting number. The smallest number that can be expressed as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. Hardy smiles, because even at the edge of goodbye, Ramanujan's mind is still doing what only Ramanujan's mind can do. Ramanujan promises to send weekly updates of his research from India, and then the two friends embrace before parting ways. A year later, in 1920, a letter finally arrives from India after a long silence. Ramanujan's illness returned during his journey home, and now he has passed away. The news nearly breaks Hardy. Not long after, he gives a brief memorial speech at Trinity College, praising Ramanujan's originality as a source of constant inspiration, and saying he is proud to have worked with a man of such caliber on something like equal terms. Meanwhile, over 6,000 miles away in India, Ramanujan's body is burned at the funeral pyre. By religious custom, his widowed wife Janaki never remarries. Decades later, in 1976, a lost notebook from Ramanujan's final year is rediscovered, filled with groundbreaking formulas still used to understand black holes to this day. And so ends the story of the remarkable 5-year partnership between Godfrey Harold Hardy and Srinivasa Ramanujan. Comment below what you thought of this film and which recap you want next. And as always, thanks for watching. It would have been better for all had the giant done his job. He could have been reincarnated as a pigeon turd.